Don't just focus on what not to do when you start a carnivore diet. Focus on your goals. Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name is Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So I've been a very strict carnivore for almost 2.5 years. On top of that, I was doing carnivore for a few years intermittently. I was on it, then I was off of it. I was on it, then I was off of it. So I don't really count that, but I did that since 2018, and I tried zero carb the first time in 2013. Now, the interesting thing about all those adventures I had trying to be consistent with zero carb carnivore eating was I was focusing so much at the time on things I should cut out, things I need to stop doing, things that I have to change, and habits that I have to break. The interesting thing about that is it can create a negative mindset, and you don't want to have a negative mindset. You always want to put a positive twist on things. So there's a difference between looking at a situation you're in, and you may not even realize it's a negative mindset, but it could be. Rephrase it to start focusing on the positive things. Keep in mind what I'm saying is instead of just focusing on what you have to stop doing, because that's a negative connotation when you have to stop something, focus on your goals. Focus as well on the things that you want to aspire to and how to get there. So we're going to talk about a few different ways that we can work on focusing on our goals. So first of all, you have to assess your situation. You have to look at your situation and figure out how often you want to eat, how often you need to eat, and you might need to figure out what kind of food you're struggling with and what kind of situations you struggle with. Are they social gatherings, or is it maybe you're stopping after work at a coffee shop and you're getting something off the carnivore diet? So you want to try and recognize the situation. Just accept it for what it is and look at your strengths and look at your weaknesses. Put it all together and figure out a strategy at that point. And I'm talking about a strategy to set yourself up for realistic goals. And that's the next step. Make sure your goals are realistic. You want to make sure you're not saying something along the lines of, I want to lose 50 pounds in the next 3 months. That's not a realistic goal because you really don't have that much control over it. You can sort of guide it in a little bit. You can manipulate those numbers to try and get to that, but that might also lead to some unhealthy ways to achieve those goals. And you don't want to do that. You want to be realistic about this. You don't want to treat a carnivore diet like a diet. You don't want to eat less and starve yourself and do what you've been doing all those years that's been a strain to your body. You want to try and fuel your body. You want to try and do what you can to make sure that your body has everything it needs to run efficiently. So you want to make sure you have a plan, and you might need to write this out for the first little while. And there's nothing wrong with writing things out. It's not something you're going to have to do the rest of your journey. It's just something you might need to do to just kind of stop and see it written down on paper, and then it becomes a little bit more real to you. So you might want to do this with everything that you notice in your environment, as well as your goals and your plans. The difference between a dream and a goal is structured. A dream is you just sitting there wanting to be thinner or wanting to be in better shape or wanting to make these lifestyle changes with a carnivore diet so that you can have a better quality of life without putting effort into it. If you're always banging your head off the wall, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to stop, reassess, and figure out where you're going wrong so that you can turn around and make a positive choice in a different direction. It doesn't have to be 180 degrees in a different direction. It might just have to be tweaked a little bit most of the time. This often helps if you get an accountability partner. So if you have somebody that you can do this with who maybe wants to do this with you, or someone who, like a spouse or a family member, that can just help keep you accountable in the beginning when you're kind of in that phase where you might kind of cheat or screw up a little bit and then get frustrated with yourself, that might be something you might need to do. Maybe you might need to see a professional about this. And I'm not just talking like a coach like Kelly Hogan, which is obviously a great way to go. We'll get into that in a minute. But you might need to see maybe a psychologist to find out why you have these unhealthy behaviors where you have a hard time sticking to a carnivore diet. Because sometimes we're just too close to see our own problems. And you might need to turn around and bounce it off not just someone, but a professional. And that's where we go into the Kelly Hogan topic, because she's a professional in a different way. She might not have years of schooling under her belt as a psychologist, but she has experience. She has the legwork. She's already been where you are. If you're trying to stick to a carnivore diet or just up your game as a carnivore and be consistent with carnivore. So she already went through all this. She's a carnivore who's been doing this for almost 20 years between zero carb and carnivore eating. She has a lot of experience under her belt, and she's also been getting training. So on top of the fact that she's got experience and she has the miles, she also has the experience helping people. She's been helping people with carnivore for a long time, and only recently she's been doing it on a larger scale, but she has a lot of experience with that. She has multiple classes with multiple people in these classes. I think she said it's something like 300 people a month that she's coaching. So having a network and a support group, somebody to kind of help you along, even if it's just one person, you have to find what works best for you. Maybe even though it's an affordable $50 a month for Kelly's coaching, you may find just having an accountability partner in your own life is a great way to go. You talk to any carnivore and they always like having a carnivore that lives close to them, someone that can relate, someone that can understand the challenges you might have trying to adopt a carnivore lifestyle. You want to have a team of people. And for lots of people, social media is kind of the only way they can get that, because carnivore is not really a well-known way of eating out there. And some people just view it as a diet, but the people who do it long-term and they do it really strict, view it as just a way of life. It's as simple as that. And family and friends can't always understand that. So it's really good when you can find someone who can relate with you on that level. And that's where I think coaching with somebody might be a better step than a psychologist. They might understand nutrition and the way of thinking in your relationship with food better than somebody else who's a coach on a more scientific level, but they don't understand really what you're doing, because they might try and project what they think is healthy on you. And meanwhile, they don't understand the concept of sugar and carbohydrate addiction. You want to find someone that's tailored to your needs. I think it's also important to stop multitasking. I think in the beginning of a carnivore journey, you want to make sure when you're trying to set up your goals with carnivore, you don't spread yourself too thin with too many goals, whether it be exercise and strict carnivore, whether you're trying to do too much activity with your carnivore. You don't want to spread yourself too thin with too much in your lifestyle. Simplicity is the key. You might have to simplify your lifestyle a little bit while you're adopting this carnivore way of eating. And keep in mind, the one thing people love about carnivore is its simplicity. And then you eat till you're satiated, and then you repeat. Typically, that gets most of the people as far as they need on a carnivore diet. Now, if you have goals, that means you have a defined outline of what you want to achieve. And you don't want to always just start with the beginning and the end. You have to accept the fact that there's going to be a journey from the beginning to the end going all the way over. And when you do that, it's not always perfectly linear. It's kind of going like this all the way up over to that goal. It's like learning to bench press. If you want to make a goal of bench pressing 300 pounds in 6 months, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to do this, and then just try and get to the 300-pound goal all at once. You have to do it in small increments, and you're going to have to get there over a period of time, and you're going to have to work for it. And if you hit plateaus, you're going to have to figure out what's wrong. Maybe you're not getting enough rest. Maybe you're not getting enough fuel. You have to figure out what the problem is and work with it. And you're going to have to always troubleshoot. You'll never find a bodybuilder who didn't have to stop and troubleshoot at any point. And it goes the same with adopting a carnivore diet. At certain points, you may have to troubleshoot. If you're in your 20s or 30s, I think you're going to adapt better to it. Your body doesn't have as much damage done to it, and you're going to bounce back pretty quick to a healthy physiology. But if you're older, it might be a little more work, and that's where you have to measure your goals as you move along. Sometimes they're going to be non-scale victories that you measure, even though the scale hasn't moved at all. So in there, we're recognizing progress. You want to make sure when you have your goals that you recognize all the good with the bad. You're not always going to have only good. Sometimes there's going to be bad, and you want to just acknowledge that comes with the territory. You're learning, you're trying something different, you're trying something new. No matter what your goal is, it's never going to be straight. So along with that is patience. You're going to need patience when you're setting up your goals and trying to knock your goals down. So you have to understand this isn't going to be an overnight thing. This is a long journey, and this isn't a 3-month journey. Even though you might get your goals done in 3 months, there's always a bigger picture and another thing to achieve. So you don't want to stop at a 3-month goal. You don't want to stop at a certain weight limit, because once you stop at that weight limit, once you achieve it, you might fall back into an old negative way of thinking, well, now that I got there, I can loosen up and I can do whatever I want. And you go back to junk food, and the next thing you know, you fall off the wagon. You don't want that for yourself, right? You want to make sure that there's always future goals. So don't stop at your first goals. Just make your first goal attainable. And then after that, set more attainable goals, always leading up to a larger goal. And of course, along with this is consistency. The one thing that's most important when doing a carnivore diet, just like bodybuilding or weight training of any kind, is consistency. If you don't have that consistency, you're only going to keep going up to the certain level, and just stopping there, right? You want to be able to go up and up and up and keep getting better. It's a progressive way of healing. It's a progressive way of getting better at anything, is consistency. So you have to make sure you're consistent. If you're being inconsistent, you're not going to get the results you want and you're sabotaging your efforts. So you want to make sure that you're not doing self-sabotage, and you want to make sure that consistency is on your side. You also want to understand what motivates you. If being thin is what motivates you, then that's what motivates you. Now that can be discouraging because we don't always see ourselves the way other people see us. And you might have been thin for a long while and not seen it. You might put on 10 pounds and everyone thinks you look healthier and you might not see it. So you have to have some outside perspectives on what you're doing, and you're both trying to work towards your goal. And you both have to understand the motivation to that goal. If it's being able to do chin-ups for the first time on your own, or it's being able to bench press your body weight, or squat a certain amount, or stick to a carnivore diet religiously for 1 year to see the health benefits that you might get, and you have to make it attainable. So be consistent, make it attainable. Don't overwhelm yourself. Lots of small steps. Underneath it all, the foundation is you have to know what motivates you. Stop and write that down. Maybe it's 5 different things that motivates you. Maybe it's your children. Maybe it's just wanting to not be in pain all the time. Maybe you don't like the discomfort of your joints. Maybe you just don't like the pain in your joints. Maybe it's a weight issue. Whatever it is, or how many of them there are, write them down in priority so that when you're not attaining the one goal of, say, weight loss, but you notice all these other goals are getting checked off the list, you're like, okay, I'm still getting to my goal, my ultimate goal. Sometimes you don't need one goal, you might need 10 goals, but prioritize which one's the most important. And when you see that main one is taking the longest because that's the longest journey, and you look and you go, yeah, but I got my other 9 goals finished, then that's a great place to be. One of my goals is to get rid of all my symptoms of metabolic syndrome. It's going to take a while, but when it happens, there's nothing that's going to be more fulfilling than that. I technically don't have metabolic syndrome anymore because you have to have 3 of the 5 symptoms of metabolic syndrome to be diagnosed with it. I only have 1, and that's my waistline. After that, I'm sitting pretty, and it's going to be a nice place when I can turn around in one of my videos and say, I no longer have any symptoms of metabolic syndrome. So remember, do what works best for you. Be strategic about this. Don't expect immediate results, especially if you've been neglecting your body for years or decades. It's going to take time. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate watching this video. If you can, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Take care.